Does that help Tesla? I mean, you had Tim Waltz, who's a huge jerk, right? You know.
Imagine this: the world's largest manufacturer of electric cars, a company that was recently hailed as a symbol of the technological revolution, is now losing everything. Not just billions of dollars of capitalization, trust, loyalty, and the future. Tesla is collapsing before our eyes. Shares are plummeting, sales are falling, and thousands of customers around the world are abandoning their electric cars en masse. But what if this is just the beginning? What if behind the dry charts and numbers lies something more? A controlled disaster caused not by market logic, but by human ambition, politics, and betrayal.
Tesla is a peaceful company. We've never done anything harmful. I've never done anything harmful. I've only done productive things. So I think we just have a deranged, there's some kind of mental illness thing going on here, because this doesn't make any sense.
In recent months, strange things have begun to happen on the streets of New York, Berlin, Paris, and Los Angeles. People who admired Elon Musk just yesterday are now coming out with placards, holding fake funerals for the brand and setting charging stations on fire. In Canada, a Tesla dealership was occupied by protesters who weren't demanding discounts or upgrades. They were demanding an apology. In Germany, former fans of the company are chaining themselves together at the entrance to showrooms. And this is not a spontaneous riot. It is a carefully planned campaign.
So there are a couple of things that might be going on here. So on the one hand, it could be that just at a very basic level, Musk has quickly observed a 40% decline in sales in Tesla in Europe.
And inside the company itself, there's panic. The people who stood next to Elon Musk at the origins of Tesla are hastily selling off shares. The CFO, Musk's brother, and a string of top managers are all leaving. More and more often, analysts are asking the question, not just will Tesla fall, but will it survive at all? For the first time in 15 years, Tesla is perceived not as a flagship of progress, but as a toxic asset from which even those who recently invested billions are fleeing.
Well, you will hear people over in Europe say the new Model Y, the Juniper, could be a difference maker, but that's been in that market now for more than a month. And you would think that you would see a greater snapback if it's going to be a difference maker. Look, we could be wrong. It could be a difference maker once you get the sales for April, May, and June. But when you have a country like Norway, I think the sales were down something like 11% there. I mean, that's a very savvy EV consumer in Norway. And that's long been a strength for Tesla. Very small market, not huge volume, but I think almost all of the vehicles they sell there are electric. And they embraced Tesla long before others. And, you know, the reports there are not encouraging.
But the most dangerous thing is not the protests, the arson, or the stock market crash. The worst is the betrayal of former supporters. The people who created the Tesla cult are now destroying it from within. They are selling off cars en masse on the aftermarket at dumping prices, removing badges from the hood, recording videos of cars being destroyed, and creating websites calling for a boycott of the brand. It's not just an image downgrade. This is organized warfare. And it's not because of a technical error, not because of bad batteries, not because of Chinese competition. No, it all started when one man, Elon Musk, decided that personal beliefs were more important than his company's reputation. Support of odious politicians, harsh statements, audacious interviews, and now Tesla is turning from a symbol of sustainable future into a scandal machine.
Hey Diane, this investigation really just beginning, and one of the key elements will of course be the surveillance video, and investigators potentially have a lot of it to work with as they try to figure out what caused this fire. We know that surveillance footage has been turned over, including video from each of the cars, which could prove vital to understanding what happened here, because each vehicle has its own camera system that works even when the car is off, and 16 cars burned in this fire. And right now investigators don't know what caused it.
Well, today we're going to tell the whole truth. Not myth, not marketing, not press release. Just the facts behind the destruction of one of the most ambitious projects of the 21st century. This is not just a story about the downfall of a company. This is a story about how one man can raise an empire and destroy it with his own hands.
Well, this feels more like a Tesla-only story when you look at just this fall in EV sales for them that they're suffering across Europe, down 45% in January. The wider EV market in Europe up 37%, so rivals are catching up and performing.
Tesla didn't just lose 6% on the stock market. It was a signal. The first blow to an already shaky structure built over years on the faith, risk, and charisma of one man. Until recently, Tesla was seen not as a company, as a phenomenon. Its quotes have long since become disconnected from reality, from physical production, from actual sales. It became a myth, a symbol of the future, a technological breakthrough, and the audacious American dream. But myths don't live forever. Especially if behind the facade of loud claims lies a fragile system built on expectations rather than fact. The bifurcation point came the moment Donald Trump returned to the White House. That date is now remembered not as a political event, but as the day institutional investors began dumping Tesla shares en masse. In the 72 hours after the inauguration, $27 billion was withdrawn from the company. Hedge funds, which had previously praised Musk as a visionary, rolled over positions. A major J.P. Morgan analyst report in March called Tesla a volatile investment anomaly for the first time. It all happened so fast that even Wall Street veterans were at a loss to explain. What exactly had happened? Why did a company that was only recently ranked among the top 10 most valuable in the world become toxic?
After Trump imposed those sweeping 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel imports, the European Union retaliating with tariffs on up to $28 billion of U.S. goods. Trump making it clear this isn't over, vowing to respond in kind with sweeping retaliatory tariffs early next month.
They're doing what they should be doing, perhaps, for the European Union, but it does create ill will. And as you know, we're going to be doing reciprocal tariffs. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them.
Canada also striking back with new tariffs on $20 billion worth of U.S. goods, mostly steel and aluminum, but also computers and sporting goods.
There were several reasons. But the main one was a shift in the political climate. The Trump administration not only eliminated tax breaks for electric cars, but also announced that traditional car companies are now the priority. A briefing at the U.S. Department of Economic Development made it clear Tesla has overestimated itself. We are committed to supporting those who manufacture in America, rather than investing in Chinese gigafactories. And while on paper Tesla is an American company, much of its production and assembly has long been moved overseas. This has become a convenient excuse to knock it out of the government support zone. There is talk that behind this initiative was not just political will, but concrete pressure from lobbyists from Ford and GM who were tired of watching Musk steal investment and attention. But the stock collapse was only the outward manifestation of a much deeper problem, the destruction of a myth. Tesla has always been more than just an automaker. It was perceived as a driver of progress, a company that carried the ideas of sustainability, freedom from oil, and even, as pathetic as it sounds, the technological salvation of humanity. Elon Musk deliberately fueled this legend. He talked about Mars, about free speech, about revolutionizing transportation, combining genius, recklessness, and charisma in one bottle. But such a construct is unstable. When Musk began making strident political statements, openly supporting far-right leaders, and ridiculing liberal values, the audience on which he stood began to slip away.
Worse than expected, 336 and 68 vehicles, 336,068 vehicles delivered in the first quarter for Tesla. For a point of reference, the street was expecting, the street account was expecting, based on analyst expectations.
The first signals came not from the stock market but from the streets. On the morning of February 4th, a bizarre action took place in New York City in front of the downtown Tell Center in Manhattan. Participants brought a black coffin labeled RIP Sustainability and chanted a psalm. Soon similar rallies began popping up all over the country. At first it seemed like eccentric behavior by frustrated activists, but that all changed when former Tesla owners began joining them. The same ones who stood in lines to get a Model S, the ones who created fan communities, who spread the idea of electrifying the planet. Now they were coming out with placards saying, "You betrayed us. Tesla is not you, Musk."
371. Most were saying 350 to 360. Now they're coming in at 336,068. Production of 362,615. So for some point of reference here, you're going back to Q2, maybe Q1 of 2022 in terms of the last time that they had production this or deliveries this low for one quarter. So again, Tesla deliveries worse than expected at just over 336,000 deliveries in the first quarter. Guys, I'll send it back to you.
That's horrible. Can I just ask Phil, how about the Cybertruck? How's that doing? You got a little inventory there in the Cybertruck?
But the real shock was the statistics. In the first quarter, Tesla lost 47% per sales in the Chinese market, 45% in Europe, and 28% in the US. Analysts have long tried to find an explanation: competition, outdated models, supply problems. Everything turned out to be both simpler and scarier at the same time. People were turning away from the brand en masse. It wasn't a market downturn, it was a flight. As Tesla's internal report, obtained by journalists through a leak, later revealed, more than 60% of the no-purchase questionnaires cited the same reason: unwillingness to support a company associated with political radicalization.
That's from the European Automobile Manufacturers Association. People just choosing with their wallets to not buy Teslas because of that Musk-Trump association. And actually here in London, an activist group called Everyone Hates Elon actually have been hacking bus stop signs with posters. I actually passed one yesterday. First, I wasn't quite sure what was happening, but it said the words 0 to 1939 in 3 seconds. Illusion here, 0 to 60 in like 3 seconds or something. But this poster was alluding to the start of World War II, and the image was of Musk giving that hand salute that we saw at Trump's inauguration that many have attacked as a Nazi gesture. Musk, though, has neither admitted or denied what he was doing. But we're seeing the knock-on effect of that anti-Musk anger across Europe and in terms of sales.
Tesla's mistake was in strategy. For the past 2 years, the company has relied on price cuts and minimal design improvements. But in the consumer's mind, this worked like a trigger, not savings, but an alarm. It's as if the company itself is demonstrating, let's hurry up and sell out before it's too late. Dozens of forums of former owners were filled with photos with comments yesterday, "I bought it for $62,000. Today the dealer offers to buy it back for $39,000. Panic spread to the aftermarket and new orders. People stopped trusting. While Tesla was losing customers, competitors weren't slumbering. Hyundai launched its new Ioniq lineup with autopilot, which scored top marks in Euro NCAP tests. BYD and NIO took 60% of the Chinese electric car segment. Ford unveiled the updated Mustang Mach-E series with a battery capable of 820 kilometers. Everything that was once unique about Tesla, technology, range, autopilot, is now available from others, often at a lower price, and with greater attention to build quality.
Teslas are being torched across the country. Dealerships shot up and set on fire. Spray paint to vandalize and make a statement. People in Southern California are getting notes on their Teslas, calling them complicit Nazis for owning electric cars.
But the most painful blow turned out to be that no more was believed. No longer believing in Musk, no longer believing in the brand, no longer believing in the future he promised. When the faith goes, the money goes. When the money goes, the system collapses. Inside Tesla, anxiety began to set in. On the sidelines of meetings, top executives talked about losing control of the narrative. And it was a rare case of a business model failing not because of finances, not because of competition, but because of a damaged reputation. Perhaps for the first time in the history of modern America, a tech giant is losing ground, not because of product failure, but because its leader has become alien to its own followers.
And police in Italy are investigating possible arson after a fire destroyed more than a dozen Tesla vehicles. Elon Musk is calling the incident at a Rome dealership terrorism. This comes as Tesla has been the target of recent protests around the world.
And this is just the beginning. When the outer shell begins to crumble, the inner structure is the first to crack. While actions, protests, and falling sales were being publicly discussed, a drama was unfolding inside Tesla that spoke far more than any analyst's reports. These weren't just alarm bells, they were evacuation signals. The people closest to the core of the company began to act, and act fast. The first to do so was Elon Musk, Elon's younger brother, a member of the board of directors, a person who had been considered an integral part of Tesla for decades. In late January, He sold $28 million worth of stock, citing the realization of long-standing financial plans. But no one had seen such plans before. Others followed. CFO Zakorn, essentially Musk's right-hand man in matters of strategy and cost, abruptly left his post, after which his name disappeared from internal corporate correspondence. Several senior vice presidents, including Thomas Langston, who oversaw supplies, and the operations head of the European office, sold off large stakes within a month.
Over the last couple of months. But the other thing that this could potentially be is an attempt at readjustment or correction by the Trump administration, in that one of Trump's closest kind of allies and supporters, and someone who's clearly very influential in the administration, is coming out to kind of push back against the recently implemented policies. So I'm thinking, or maybe hopeful is the right word, that this might be a signal that the administration is considering walking back some of those policies.
Inside the company, it was dubbed the silent exodus. No one made any noise, no loud layoffs were announced. Everything was done quietly. Statements about fatigue, change of life priorities, transition to new projects. But fear lurked behind the beautiful wording. One of the former middle managers, who quit in March, admitted in an interview on condition of anonymity, "We saw the documents. We knew what was going on with logistics, with customer failures, with defects on new models. And it was all being glossed over. And Musk just kept making jokes on Twitter."
Running around on stage with the Tesla stock price, where the stock price had gone in half. And he was overjoyed. What an evil thing to do. What a creep. What a jerk. Like, who derives joy?
Around the same time, the first leaks from internal chats began to surface, documents published on Reddit. And the Tesla Watchdog blog showed that investor relations staff discussed a strategy to delay the release of negative data until after the quarter ended, coordinate top executives' exits with stock sales so that they didn't overlap in the same window. It wasn't a direct violation of the law, but things looked extremely suspicious. And when in April it became known that the pension fund of Tesla employees got rid of 40% of their investments in the company's shares, even loyal observers began to recognize the situation was getting out of control.
We begin with the president's trade war escalating tonight. This evening, the retaliation against the United States, Canada, and the European Union responding quickly, just hours after President Trump's 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum coming into the United States.
Against this financial outcome, another more dangerous storm was brewing. One that cannot be measured in dollars, a storm of public outrage. The initial protests we mentioned earlier soon ceased to be a mere manifestation of discontent. They became an organized campaign. Initially, it looked like street performances, Tesla's funeral in Paris, chains outside the showroom in Berlin, symbolic burning of license plates in Chicago. But as early as March, mentions of the coordinating center of the movement, called Tesla Takedown, appeared in Telegram channels. The unofficial headquarters was in Toronto, and the core of the movement was made up of former investors, developers and activists who had previously supported the brand.
I mean, the things that he's doing is not trying to make America better. He's ruining our infrastructure, every department in our government he's ruining, and he's right now destroying our economy. He's taken away all of our allies. We're a pariah in the world.
Tesla Takedown published its first manifesto on March 14th. It said the movement's goal was to prevent authoritarian leadership in the guise of technological progress from continuing to exist. Among the first steps proposed was to crash the secondary market. People were dumping their Tesla en masse at dumping prices well below market value, thereby undermining the overall value of the brand. The organization's website even offered ready-made ad description templates that suggested stating sorry, but can no longer be associated with this company. On TikTok and YouTube, there were videos of owners ripping the Tesla logo off cars, smashing screens and scrapping working cars. All of this was accompanied by the hashtags Dump Tesla, Musk is over and No More EV Messiah. For the first time in the brand's history, fans began to move into the opponent's camp, and it had a devastating effect. Secondary market price drops of up to 32% in 2 months. This meant one thing: new customers no longer felt confident that the car would retain its value, so they stopped buying.
KTLA Samantha Cortese joins us live with more on the wave of vandalism in protest of Elon Musk and his role in Washington. Sam?
Hi, Sharon, Micah. The ATF and FBI are collaborating with federal, state, and local law enforcement to investigate acts of domestic terrorism surrounding Teslas.
At the same time, a wave of sabotage began. In February, a fire broke out at a supercharger station in Massachusetts. 7 charging slots burned down. 2 days later, a similar incident occurred in Connecticut. In both cases, forensics confirmed arson. In April, 12 Tesla cars parked outside a corporate center burned down overnight near Lyon. There was no graffiti or slogans at the site, just black ash and silence. French police said such coordination indicates a pre-planned attack. In Berlin, unknown people spilled acid on the windows of the Tesla center. In Mexico City, the gates of a warehouse were blocked by cars with slogans, "You are no longer a symbol." Tesla tried to react, security measures were strengthened, cameras were installed, private services were involved, but the brand was no longer seen as a victim. It became an object of anger. In April, an audio recording of a meeting at which the internal communications manager uttered a phrase that went viral. "We are not in a crisis, we are in an uprising," appeared online.
Outperforming as well in some cases, doing better than Tesla. And you just have to think, how much more is this a sustained issue for Tesla going forward, given the fact that you have Elon Musk, who's been very forthright in his opinions, particularly weighing in on politics, particularly in Europe. We've just had the European elections, which Musk has been very focused on. But across the piece, when you look at the performance for Tesla in Europe, it's not just in small countries. There are a lot of countries where Tesla has been performing badly, including in Germany, in the UK, where it has been lagging, and Spain as well.
But it's not even the numbers that matter. The important thing is the sentiment. Corporate reports call it the consumer demoralization effect. When a buyer coming to a car dealership no longer feels that he is buying the future, when he fears the reaction of his peers, when he doubts whether to spend tens of thousands of dollars on a brand that has become a symbol of division. And this is perhaps the most devastating outcome of the entire crisis. Tesla no longer unites. It polarizes. It no longer inspires, it tires. The world of electric cars will not disappear. It will continue to evolve, but now without a single leader. No monolith. Tesla may stay afloat, reformat itself, fight for what's left of its share, but its era of dominance is over. Not as a result of technological defeat, not because of a lost battery race, but because one man's charisma has outgrown the limits of common sense. And now, instead of questions about the future, there is only one: how long can the company last when even its shadow no longer seems bright?